Try to make yourself relaxed, comfortable. And watch the breath mindfully for a few moments. Then we can try to generate good intention by thinking, may us coming here together with the best intentions and giving our precious time to listen and to reflect, contemplate, and to engage in discussions. May all of this become cause and condition to remind us, inspire us to practice the Dharma. And through the practice with Dharma, may we be able to cultivate pure renunciations, Bodhichitta mind, and wisdom realizing emptiness within our mind stream and with the minds within the mind stream of each and every sentient being. And by relying on these three principal aspects of the path, may we be able to obtain a fully enlightened state of Buddhahood. And liberate all sentient beings from all their suffering and cause of suffering, to guide and lead them to the ultimate happiness of fully enlightened state. Okay, then we can have the prayer. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create to listen to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Sangye chodang soge sonam la, chanjo pado dane, dagi choche gibe sonam, dola penje sangye duva. Sangye chodang soge sonam la, chanjo pado dane, dagi choche gibe sonam, dola penje sangye duva. So in terms of the three principal aspects of the path. So far, I think we are still on the first one, renunciations. And within that, we discuss about why we need to cultivate the renunciations. And then we are in the second, where how to cultivate or how to generate the renunciations. And within that, Lam Tsongkhapa explains by cultivating renunciations, by reversing the appearance or attachment to this life, mainly letting go of attachment to this life and the samsaric experience of this life, and particularly the eight worldly concerns. And I think we spoke about that last week, and how we overcome the eight worldly concerns and the attachment to this life is through the practice of combining the precious human rebirth and impermanent in general, and especially death impermanent. And so today we go to the next verse, which is again verse number 4, but the second one, and then not only we need to generate renunciations, that turn away our mind from being so attached to any of the eight worldly concerns and any of the attached to this life and experience of this life, but also in order to develop the full renunciation, in order to develop and cultivate full renunciation, then we should be able to turn our mind away from also, being attached to future life and the experience of future life within the samsara, so in order to cultivate the full renunciation, and for that, then that is where the next comes. So here is saying, by thinking over and over again that actions and their effect are unbetraying, and repeatedly contemplating the miseries of the cyclic existence, attraction to the appearance of future life is reversed. So attractions or attachment to future life is, being attached to this idea of having a, better future life. Maybe we might see there is some, challenges, difficulty in this life, but maybe we might have a strong attraction, attachment in the future life, as a human beings or in a God realms, where there will be less suffering, where you can have where you have long life, healthy life, long, healthy, prosperity, where, everything seems just externally, where everything seems just fine and good. So we might be attached to that kind of idea to have that kind of future life, thinking, I wouldn't mind, being samsara as long as good health, as long as prosperity, as long as, I'm able to get what I need, and so again, that is the attraction, attachment to the future life. So giving up, attachment, attraction to even such, even such a life, we have to give up that attachment in order to have the pure, complete renunciations. And how can we develop their renunciations, and reverse that appearance, attraction to that appearance of future life? is by meditating on, karma, the law of cause and effect. That is, unbetrayal, is true, fact, as well as meditating on the shortcoming, the fault of being in samsara, and we need to contemplate, meditate again and again, over and over again, in order to have that pure renunciation, complete renunciation, by combining those two practices of meditation on karma and the fault and shortcoming of the samsara. So, in relation to that, then first, karma is, quite subtle, not easy to understand, especially when you go in more details, subtle details of the karma, and therefore, if we don't, karma is so subtle, so therefore, if we are unable to free from the samsara, then we will continue to create new karma. And if we continue to create new karma, then we will continue to again circle in the samsara endlessly, again and again. And if we circle in the samsara, we continue to experience the suffering of the samsara endlessly, again and again. And therefore, we need to understand the karma better, profoundly, and then, stop creating any contaminated karma. Stop creating any contaminated karma. That is the cause of samsara. From another side, in order to free from the samsara, then, we have to stop creating the cause of samsara. That is the karma, contaminated karma, that is motivated by the ignorance. Until we stop, creating karma that is motivated by the ignorance, we will never be free from the samsara. And if we don't free from the samsara, we will never be able to, free from sufferings. And so therefore, again, the understanding of having a strong convictions and practicing the karma is crucial. And in order to have that strong convictions, faith in karma, then, we need to contemplate and meditate on karma. In order to contemplate and meditate on them, karma deeply, then we need to learn and study more about them. Therefore, the Buddha explains, very details on the karma, how karma is definite, how karma increases. And if you don't create the karma, you will not experience the result. If you have created the karma, then, unless that is being destroyed by some other forces, you will definitely experience of that. So, in those details. And so one need to study, learn more of those details, and then try to reflect and contemplate on them, The reason why we continue to create negative karma, or even when we create virtuous karma, still contaminated karma, that is still the cause of samsara. That is still cause of samsara, is, because one, we haven't really understood how, the functioning of the karma, the functioning of law of cause and effect. We haven't understood it deeply. Our understanding at the moment is very artificial, very superficial, very dry, very dry. And we can see that by our response, by our response to situations. When something bad happened to others, it's easy for us to say, oh, is there karma? We think about that. We say about things as though we really understood karma very deeply in that, But when it happened to us, then how do we feel? Do we think it's karma? We don't feel that, We don't. Then, then we started to, complain others and blame others for our suffering, our situations. We don't really kind of accept responsibility from our karmic point of view. The way it is so easy for us to say to others, but when it comes to us, it is never easy. Never easy to take responsibility and say it's absolutely I'm experiencing because of my karma. We always seem to kind of immediate reactions, immediate kind of response, seem to find another something out there to blame for that situations. And that just clearly shows, our understanding of karma and belief in karma is not so strong, not so depth enough, profound enough. If we have a very strong, profound, depth understanding of that, the first reactions when something happened to us would be, oh, my karma ripening is a result of my karma. We wouldn't try to find some other outside there to kind of and so that just show how our understanding of karma is shallow, not deep. Shallow, not deep. And because our understanding and our faith in karma is shallow and not deep enough, therefore, we don't become so, what do we call, so careful. We don't become so careful, so mindful not to engage into any of negative karma or contaminated karma, I give you one example, when you're driving, most time people try to follow the rules, okay? Not going over the speed, not going over the signs, and not turning where you are not supposed to turn, Most people try to follow that as much as possible, quite well. But then when you are in a kind of, rush, busy, then you will take those risks, You might try to go over the limits, Sometimes, people drive even through the lights, Sometimes people do, turns where they're not supposed to do, all of that. Risk with the hope that because, there is, with the hope that there is no police or camera there, But if there is a place, that there's absolutely police waiting or camera is there, no matter how rushed you are, you will not do that. No matter how rushed you are, if there is a camera, or police waiting there, you will not try to go over the limit or go on the lights and turn where you are not, because you are 100% sure, you are convinced if you do that, you will be uh, punished for doing that because there is someone there. But other time you do because you don't know, and so you take a little bit of a risk. But here you don't take risk because you know definitely you will be punished. Definitely there will be for breaking the law. So you see how we react differently when you know absolutely there is something, that there is someone uh, that you will be punished for going, and when you think maybe you could get over it, maybe you might not be good. Same way, that is how when we have a strong, deep understanding and faith in karma, you will never take a risk. You will never take the risk. You will never be. One will never be careless, because one will experience the consequences of such actions. Definitely, definitely one will experience the consequences of that. But at the moment, sometimes, it's like, we thought maybe I might not experience. Maybe yes, maybe not, Maybe there's karma, maybe there's not, Sometimes when it's convenient to us, we say, oh, there is karma. When it's not convenient to us, maybe we think, I don't know about karma. Maybe yes, maybe not. Maybe it is there, maybe it's not there, Sometimes don't we feel that way, That is how sometimes we feel, that is how we respond, Yeah. It makes sense when it's convenient to us. When it is not convenient to us, then we started to say, oh, I am not sure, whether there's karma or not. I'm not sure whether this is karma or not, And so because of that kind of attitude we have, and that kind of attitude is because we don't have a deep, profound understanding of that and deep faith in that. And once someone who has a deep, profound understanding and faith in that, they never think that way. They will never have that kind of attitude, and they will never be careless, even it's a very small negative karma, or negative actions, So therefore, and in order to have that deep, in order to have that kind of profound, deep understanding and deep realizations and, profound faith in karma, then of course one need to really contemplate and meditate again and again and again and again, over and over again. It doesn't come just by listening itself, just by understanding the theory. Is that kind of feeling doesn't come. We have to go from theory, intellectual understanding, to experiential understanding, and that experiential understanding comes through contemplation, meditation again and again over the time, and so that is one thing we need to, important of that, um, and so it is said, the practice of engage in the practice of karma is the very first of engage in Dharma practice. It's the starting point, or the practice of the Dharma, beginning or starting point of the Dharma practice. It is says, the beginning of the path is the Guru devotions. The beginning of the lumbering meditation is the precious human rebirth. The beginning of meditations is the right motivations. And the beginning of the practice of Dharma is the practice of the karma. On the basic level, the practice of karma is refraining from 10 non-virtuous actions and engaging in 10 virtuous actions. And that is the very beginning of practice of the Dharma. And that is also the precept of having taken the refuge. When you go for refuge, when you take refuge, after taking refuge, then we follow the precept, and the precept, the main practice from that precept is refraining from 10 non-virtuous actions and engaging in 10 virtuous actions. And so that is the very beginning of the Dharma practice, because that is where we start. We take refuge, and having taken refuge, then we enter the Dharma, and then that is when we start practicing. The beginning of practice of Dharma is then following the advice of precept of having taken the refuge, and that is again starting with the practice of the karma, referring to those negative karma or actions, and engaging in the virtues and positive karmas or actions. And if we engage in that practice, if we have that strong practice of, if we have the very strong practice of refraining 10 non-virtuous actions and engaging in 10 virtuous actions, then definitely we will have a higher rebirth, better rebirth next time. Then, at the time of end of our life, you don't have to request and ask, all the teachers, all the lamas, all the monks, sanghas to do puja, prayer, and all of that. You have already done the work yourself, create the right cause and conditions. On the other hand, if you have not create the right cause and condition through that practice, we live our life engaged in non-virtuous actions. At the time of death, we request all the lamas, all the teachers, all the monks, nuns, sanghas for prayers, dedications. Not sure whether they would be able to completely, whether they will be able to protect you, But if we have done that practice, then, if we have that strong practice, then we don't have to worry about that, We don't have to worry about that. We have created all the right cause and conditions for better futures, better futures. So that is so that is a little bit on karma, without going so much, we don't need to go so much details. And those who want to study more details, then you can read in a Lamrim, in Lamrims, all of those different Lamrims, you can find more detail on the karma in those. So that is meditating karma. And so through engage in the strong practice of 10 virtuous actions and refrain 10 non-virtuous actions, and even we have better futures as a human beings, not only as a human beings, as we can see, some human beings who have quite good health throughout their life, not sick. They might have little here and there, but not really serious kind of health issues, and who have a lot of, who doesn't have to work so hard. Naturally they have easy kind of prosperities, and also, maybe they might even have a, good relationship in whatever relationship, So even we have that as a human beings, higher rebirth as a human beings, not only human beings, within the human beings in a good conditions, better conditions among the human beings, or even we have a rebirth as a demigod and God, even with the God, whether it's a desire God realm, form God realm, formless God realms, any of those realms, even we are born in one of them, still we are not still free from the samsara. We are not still free from the samsara. And as long as we are in samsara, we are never free from the suffering. We are never free from the suffering. Sometimes the suffering is intense, gross. Sometimes the suffering is not intense and gross, more subtle, but suffering is still there. And sometimes even we don't have even subtle pain and suffering, but the potential is always there to produce any pain and suffering is always there, as long as there's samsara. Again, as if we take as a human beings, that is something that we can see, if you are born as a human being in the samsara, within the samsara, samsara means we are not talking about the place itself, this world we are not saying this world we are born is a samsara. When you talk about samsara means, your being, your reincarnation, your rebirth is driven by your own contaminated karma and the delusions. When your aggregates, when your being, your rebirth, your reincarnations, or your aggregates are thrown away or being born out of that contaminated karma and the delusion, that is what we call samsara. Such aggregate is samsara. Such rebirth is samsara. So it's not the external place itself. Is our aggregates, our so as long as we're that kind of rebirth, samsaric rebirth or reincarnations, then we are never free from the problem and sufferings. And we can see, there isn't any human being, samsaric human being in this planet where we can plan to say that he or she doesn't have any problem. Hasn't been throughout the history. There's no one we can point. In our time, there's no one who we can point. There's suffering of birth, because the good things we don't remember the birth. We are too young. If we remember, there's a lot of suffering, pain. Just imagine, people poolings from such a small things, So and then there is a lot of, we don't need to go so detailed, So every time it is whether it's a natural birth or whether you have a birth through surgery, still there is a lot of suffering. The good things we don't remember that. And the suffering of sickness. Everyone go through a certain level of sickness. Some people have more serious sickness. Some people have less serious sickness, but we all experience certain level of suffering throughout our life. Time to time, again and again, and then suffering of aging. Nobody want to get aged. Nobody want to age. But we cannot stop. No one can stop aging. With the aging, then it comes with a lot of, your body, mind, all of them, is not as strong, healthy as before, become more weak, and that bring another problem, pain, sufferings. And then, at the end, we all have to die. Nobody want to die, but we cannot stop from dying. And because we are experiencing something we don't want, so also mentally, emotionally, we are suffering because something that we don't want is happening to us, and then the suffering of, encountering those which we don't want to face, different situation, different individuals, different things, different experience, which we don't want, but still they arises and we face them, we encounter them, so there is sufferings. And then the losing and separating those we like, those we we like, whether it's human beings, whether it's animals, whether it's objects, external object things that we very much like, close to. We don't want to lose them. We don't want to be separated. But the reality is we lose our loved ones, dear ones. Things get lost that we like. Things get broken. So all of that, again, when that happens, there's a lot of pain and sufferings. Mm-hmm. And the suffering of never being satisfied. And they say that is the worst sufferings. Some of the masters say that is the worst sufferings. The suffering of dissatisfied, the suffering of not being satisfied with no matter what we have, no matter how much we have, isn't it? It's always like that. When you are here, you are not happy, you want to go there. When you are there, you are not happy, you want to come here. When you have this, you are not satisfied, you want that. When you have that, you are not satisfied, you want something else. And that is how our life, and that is even the billionaire and trillionaire, even they are not happy and satisfied. If you really look, it's interesting. It's the most rich people who are the one who are always fighting to give less tax that can help the citizen of those people. And they are always trying to increase their wealth more and more. And no matter how much they make, they still want to make more and more. What does that show? Is they are not satisfied and happy with what they already have. If they were satisfied and happy with what they had, they wouldn't be pushing all this, trying to take advantage of all the loop in the constitutions or the law and all of that, and how not to pay and this and that, and pass law and all the lobbies and pass the law that will support their business and all of that, pushing all the time. Why they keep on doing, even though they have so much? Because they are not satisfied with what they have. So if they are not satisfied with what they have, they must be experiencing pain, sufferings. That is the suffering, not being, always feeling not enough, always feeling need something more, something else, better, more. And of course, I'm giving that example, but we are not exception from them, okay? Same, we are doing the same things, as long as we have the delusions. As long as we have the delusions, that is what happens, So, and so, yes, many of the masters said that is the worst suffering, worst sufferings, So when we contemplate on that, when we reflect, contemplate, meditate on that, then we begin to understand, no matter, how rich, how successful, how much fame, how much powerful, whatever, no matter what, even though you have all of that, even though we have all of that, still, if we are in samsara, still we'll continue to suffer. We'll continue to suffer. We'll never be free from the suffering. At the moment when we don't have that, we feel like, if I can have that, I will be happy. Isn't it? When we don't have, we really feel, if I can get the house I want, if I can get the job I want, if I can make enough money in my business or whatever, this and that, then my life will be good. I will be happy. But this is just a deception. This is just a deception that is created by our own mind. If that is the case, if that's the truth, we look around ourselves, people around there who have all of that. Are they happy? Are they more happy than us? Not necessarily. Many of them suffer more than ourselves. That is why, some of those rich, famous people, they have so much depressions. And a lot of them, they die out of overdosing of those antidepressant medicines. You often hear news, why they are depressed, because they are unhappy about something in their life. So therefore, so when we reflect that, then we see, as long as we are samsara, there's no real happiness. There's no true happiness. There's no real happiness. So you begin to have that understanding of that more and more. You begin to have more and more understanding, more and more stronger understanding, more and more deep understanding of that. And the more deep understanding and realization you have, the less and less you get attached to the samsara and samsaric experience, no matter what kind of rebirth that within the samsara, you will get less and less attached to them. And if you are less attached to it, if you have no attachment, then it opens your heart to generate and cultivate your renunciations more and more. It will give rise to the renunciations. So that is why one need to meditate on that, in order to cultivate the full renunciations. And especially, if we think about, yeah, of course, three lower realms has their own suffering. Human have our own sufferings, that which we can see, we all can see, experience human suffering. We all can see and experience the suffering of animals, even though for us, we cannot see the other two lower realms and their sufferings, but at least that's what. And even though we cannot see some of the suffering of the other higher rebirth, such as demigod and God, but again, according to the teachings, they also have sufferings, because they are also within the samsara, they have their individual sufferings, Demigod has suffering of, maybe I don't need to go each of them. So basically, we all are suffering one of the three sufferings. Either suffering of pain, either suffering of change, or either suffering of all-pervasive. And sometimes we are experiencing two of them, sometimes we are experiencing three of all suffering together. The suffering of pain is more easy to recognize that as a suffering. Having a headache when we get, headache, sick, ill, when someone hit us, the pain, the suffering of hunger, thirsty, heat, hunger or too cold, too hot, all of this, the pain that we experience is easy. Those are sufferings. Not only we human being, even the animal kind of realize those are suffering. And even the animals, because they realize and recognize that, they try to avoid them. They try to avoid those pain and sufferings. Why they try to avoid that? Because they know it's a suffering, it's a pain. And because no one wants pain and suffering. So the contaminated, the suffering is the suffering of the pain. Then the suffering of change is contaminated samsaric pleasure. Contaminated samsaric pleasure is known as the suffering of pain. I mean, the suffering of change. When you were hungry, we eat our favorite dish where we feel happy, satisfied, joy. That is what we call happiness. When it is too hot, we turn on our heater and on air condition and cool. And again, it make cool, and then again you started to feel more comfort, joy, happiness. When it's too cold, you turn on your heater and it gives you warm and you feel joy, happiness. And all those are what we call samsaric pleasure, happiness, But as Buddha said, and in all the teachings, they are not true happiness. They are not true happiness. They are not true happiness. They don't really give you true happiness, It is like this, Sometimes you have bitter medicine, and you don't like the bitter, So they put a cold, sweet, cold with the sweet, So at the very beginning, when you take the medicine, it's a sweet. After some time, you started to taste the bitter, The nature of that medicine is the bitter. And the sweetness is just coated outside. And that's what it is, all this kind of happiness. It is samsaric happiness are like that. At the end, they lead to disappointment. At the end, they lead to that bitterness. They don't lead to sweet, just like that, the bitter medicine that has been coated by the sweet. If you keep on eating, then after some time, you experience the bitterness. You don't experience the sweet all the time. Same like those samsaric happiness. At the end, it always leads to kind of disappointment or dissatisfied, unhappy. Even though at the very beginning, there seems to be some pleasant feelings, and they are by not nature happiness, because if they are happiness by its nature, by itself as a nature, the more you experience that, the more happiness it had to bring, but that is not the case, If you keep on eating and eating, what happens, You get sick, So if you continue to eat, without stopping, if the eating is giving you the joy that comes through happiness, if it's true happiness, then the more you eat, the more joy you will experience. And it's same with all other experience, same, So that is the suffering of, change. So sometimes we experience suffering or pain, sometimes we experience suffering or change, sometimes we experience both of them together. And the suffering of all pervasive is, that, this very aggregates, that is the result of karma, contaminated karma and delusion, that itself is suffering. And that is the basis of other true suffering. The other true suffering comes because of such aggregate. It's the root of other true suffering. It's the basis of true other suffering. And that one is experienced by all sentient beings within the samsara. And we experience that 24 hours. That's suffering. Because our aggregate is 24 hours, where our aggregate, which is the result of our own delusions and karma. And therefore, we become the slave and prisoner of our karma and delusions. And when you become prisoner and slave of your own karma and your own delusions, that itself is suffering. When we become the slave and prisoner of that, that is why, and so we are never free from the suffering, even for a moment. Of course, there are moments when we are free from suffering or pain, when we don't have that pain, but we are always 24 hours, as long as we're samsara, always being prisoner and slave of our delusion karma, always, until we're free from them, until we are able to free from them, So even when we are sleeping, and even when you are not experiencing suffering or pain, but we are still, as long as we're samsara, we are still, still we don't have the freedom, and we are still prisoner and slave of our delusion karma. And that itself is the suffering. That itself is suffering. Therefore, if we want to get out of the suffering, then we have to free ourselves from being the prisoner and slave of delusion karma. That is what it means, getting out of samsara, freeing from the samsara. Freeing from samsara, liberating from samsara, getting out of samsara means that we try to free ourselves from the prisoner and the slave, being a slave of the delusion and contaminated karma. When we are able to do that, then we can free from the samsara and the bondage of samsara. And so the more we reflect, the more we contemplate on that, the more and more deeper we come to understand, I must stop creating such contaminated karma. I must stop creating such contaminated karma. The way to create such contaminated karma is stop the delusions that make us to create those contaminated karma. To stop the delusions. Because as long as we are delusion, we continue to create those karma. And we need to stop the delusions. And in order to stop the delusions, then we need to cut the very root of the delusions. And that is the fundamental ignorance. So that is where, when you meditate on that, the suffering of the samsara, the fault of samsara, the shortcoming of samsara, then you will not be attached to the samsara at all. No matter how it looked nice, no matter outside how it looked nice, you will not be attached by that. You will not be deceived by the appearance. At the moment, we are very much being deceived by the appearance. Just like us giving example with that, if you don't like bitterness, if you don't like bitterness, then to deceive you, someone coated, sugar coated, and it is like that. Samsara is bitter, painful, suffering, but sometimes to us it looked like that, sweet coated, look nice, good, not bad. And that is a deception. That's the deceptions. And so when you meditate, then you will not be deceived by those appearances, but instead one will realize what really samsara means, what it is to be in samsara, no matter how it looks, it is bitter, it's a suffering, it's a pain. Once you have understanding of that, then you will not be attached to them by the external appearances. You will not be, one will not be deceived, and one will not be attached to them. And when you are not attached to them, then your mind turns away from it. And when your mind turns away from the samsara, then your mind is able to direct toward the true liberation, true nirvana. And when your mind turns away from the samsara, and when your mind turns towards true liberation and nirvana, that mind is the renunciations. That mind is the renunciations. At the moment, even we talk about liberation, nirvana, our mind is not turning towards that. Our mind is turning towards the samsara, We're still kind of caught up in samsaric things. Even though we know we make a lot of prayers, dedications, we recite a lot of prayers, all of that, talking about freeing from samsara, achieving liberations, but our mind is not really turning towards it, is turning towards the samsara, still running after the samsara. Because again, we are being deceived by the appearance. And that is because we haven't really understood depth enough. And, and in order to have that depth understanding, again, meditating again and again, over and over is important. That is why meditation is so important. That is why meditation is so important. Sometimes we feel like just having intellectual understanding will be enough. It is not enough. It is not enough to have just intellectual understanding. Just by intellectual understanding, it is not going to really change our innate kind of feelings, It's like someone, let's say, someone who is addicted, whatever substance it might be. Many of them, they know how harmful it is for them. Intellectually, they know how harmful that it is for them, but they cannot resist. They cannot resist the temptations, and then they continue to take it, So they have that understanding, intellectual understanding. Just by that, it's not enough to go to be able to change their mind and kind of give up being so addicted to the whatever substances. Same way, even though we know, by intellectually, but that itself is not enough. That understanding have to come from the depth of our mind. And to have that, experiential understanding, then meditation is the way to do that. Meditation is the key and way to do that, So that is what is. So I think that is how to generate the renunciation, full, complete renunciations. Okay, and then now is definition of having generated the renunciations. Definition or measurement, or evaluating. How do we know whether we have cultivated renunciation or not? So again, one of the things, studying is so important. Studying is so important. If you study, then you can evaluate yourself in terms of your practice, where you are up to, whether you have, how much progress you have made, whether you have cultivated the realization or not. You can evaluate yourself. You don't have to, you wouldn't have so much doubt. But if we don't study, then, then we didn't know, until someone say or lamas or one of the teachers say, oh, you have developed these realizations or not on this, and you just have to trust them that they're giving the right informations, But then when you study, then you don't have to actually go and ask them, unless in certain specific, very subtle cases, Otherwise, there is already that. And so that is here. How do we know we have developed that? Once you have developed realization of renunciation, how do we know? So that is where. When by having training that way, so, when having training that way, by meditating and meditating and contemplating again and again on, on precious human rebirth, death impermanent, and the karma, and the nature of samsara, having contemplated, meditated, and trained your mind again and again in this way, after some time, there's no arising, even for a second, of attractions to the perfections of cyclic existence. And after some time, then, we don't have any kind of attractions or attachment to any kind of perfections of the samsara, no matter how good it looks, samsaric experience, we will not be attached to them even for a second, not being attracted, attached to, even the perfections, the best of the samsara, not being attached even for a second for the best of the samsara, So we can see, whatever best thing in this samsara, whatever best you can see in this samsara, even to this, forget about not the best ones, but even for those best things, best objects, best experience within the samsara, we are not attached to them, attracted to them, even for a second moment, when you have that renunciations, And all day and night, the intention seeking liberation arises, And not only you are not attracted and attached to the base of the samsara, but day and night, the wish to achieve, the wish to liberate, the wish to achieve nirvana arises day and night, spontaneously, naturally, effortlessly. And when that happens, then that is when, then the thought of renunciation has been generated. When that happens, then you know that you have cultivated the pure renunciation, the complete pure renunciations. And so it is said, sometimes they give an example like that, the only precious child of the mother, if the only precious child of the mother is sick, not feeling well, and when the mother, go to sleep and they wake up, naturally thoughts come about worry or thinking about the pain of the child, that come naturally, spontaneously. And like that, that is how it is, without any effort, without any effort, without any effort. Naturally, spontaneously, when that kind of feeling comes, not just just for a moment, but day and night all the time, day and night all the time. So there's two things. One, not being attached or attracted to the samsaric, even the best of the samsaric, experiences, objects, even for a second. That is one part, The second part is having that the wish to achieve enlightenment, the aspiration to achieve enlightenment arising day and night spontaneously. So when that happens, the two things that happens, so from one perspective, your mind is turned away, okay? Your mind is turned away from the samsaric pleasure, samsaric prosperity, perfection of samsara. And then from other side, your mind is turned towards the liberations, and when that happens, and in order to have that kind of, effortless and spontaneous, that kind of feeling, then of course, through meditations, at the very beginning, we have to put a lot of effort. It doesn't come naturally, but you have to put effort to contemplate and meditate again and again, again and again. As you continue to meditate and contemplate again and again, then slowly, slowly, with the practice, with the familiarity, then, it required less and less effort, less and less effort, and then slowly, slowly, you are able to reach a point you can arise those mind or that feeling without any effort, effortlessly, and that is where the realizations of the samsara, renunciation is generated, cultivated. And such renunciations, we might think, one might need renunciations in order to, achieve individual liberations. But what about if we want to achieve fully enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings? Maybe renunciation is not needed, because as a bodhisattvas, we need to come into the samsara to benefit and help again and again. And so therefore, we might not need a renunciation. That is totally misunderstanding, having that kind of concept. Renunciations is needed in order to generate bodhicitta mind. Without renunciation, no bodhicitta. No bodhicitta without renunciations. When we meditate on the suffering of the samsara, unbearable suffering of the samsara, when that feeling of unbearable suffering of the samsara, when it is turned towards you, it becomes renunciations. And when that is turned towards others, that becomes compassion, great compassion and bodhicitta. So therefore, in order to turn that towards others, first you need to have feeling for yourself. And therefore, Shantideva said, if you don't have any feeling or unbearable of the nature of samsara and the suffering of the samsara when you think on yourself, when you try to think that on others, how can you feel unbearable for others when you see the suffering of them? If you don't feel that's unbearable to yourself when it is happening to you, And I can, again, we can see that, For example, you could have a strong fever or headache, and you see when you have that kind of a very strong fever or headache, how unbearable it is, how unbearable, and you want to get relief from that immediately. If there is any medication, that you will take it because it is so strong and unbearable, And then because you understand that with yourself, when someone has that similar headache and fever, you can feel for them. You can understand how unbearable it is, how painful it is. If you don't know yourself, then even someone has that headache and fever, you wouldn't know how unbearable, how painful it is. And so when they say, I'm feeling very unbearably pain, you think, oh, they are just making up. You might feel they are just making up, exaggerating. Do you get it? Sometimes we feel that, when people think, oh, maybe they are exaggerating, or they are just making up, or maybe they don't know how to deal with it, all kind of things. So you don't feel compassion for them. Instead, you have all this, instead of compassion when they express their pain and suffering, instead of feeling compassion for them because you feel it is so, you understand how unbearable that is. Instead, you will say, they are, he or she is just exaggerating, or he or she is creating just a drama, or he or she is trying to make things, overly doing things, overly saying things. So then when we have that kind of attitude, then we don't have compassion for them. On other side, when you see, oh, they are really feeling the pain, unbearable, then you feel compassion for them. And that is because you can relate with your experience. Because when you had that, it was so unbearable, so painful. So you can relate with that. And so that gives compassion. So same way with this, when you see the suffering, the samsara is so unbearable when you relate with yourself. The suffering in samsara is so unbearable, so painful. But that understanding, then you generate the renunciations. Then you see you don't get attached to that. Instead, you want to get out of there. You want to liberate from that because it's so painful, because it's so unbearable. And that is what renunciation is. And so when you see that, then when you think about others, then you see as long as they are in samsara, it's so unbearable, it's so painful. Just like me. So therefore, then you can feel compassion for them. Then you can have bodhichitta towards them. And so therefore, that is also why renunciations here explained before the bodhichitta. Because when you have that renunciations, then it makes much more easy to cultivate bodhichitta mind towards others. Then it becomes very easy, or more easier, to feel compassion for, to cultivate compassion and bodhichitta towards others. So renunciation, cause of bodhichitta, great compassion and bodhichitta. So that is, does anyone have any questions so far? Questions or any comments, questions? Does anyone?
You said
Yeah.
Renunciation is a prerequisite for bodhicitta.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So that would happen first.
Yes. 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 So, and that is also why it is explained before the bodhichitta. And also that is why, like in terms of lumbering the stages of the path, renunciation is the part of the practice of middle scope. And the bodhichitta is great scope. And again, that is a gradual stage of the path. So the practice of small scope help us to develop this practice of middle scope, and the practice of the middle scope help us to cultivate the practice of great scope. And so that is a gradual stages of the path. Yeah. So
Thank you.
most welcome. Yeah. unless for certain individuals, exceptional, because they already have work on renunciation in the past. So maybe in this life, they might not have to work so much on renunciations, but they can work on just bodhicitta. But because the homework they have already done in the past, But if someone is doing from the very beginning, then they have to start from the first steps, step by step. And yeah, so, but also sometimes bodhicitta or compassion can also help the renunciation. They can kind of help a little bit also that way, when you feel the suffering of others, when you have compassion for them because you see so much pain and sufferings of other beings, when you feel the pain and suffering of so much others, then, even though you don't have that same pain and suffering and difficulty like they are facing in their life, even though you might not have that, facing the same difficulties, same problems, same situation like they are facing, let's say someone who is close to you, family members, friends, or another beings. And when you see so much pain and suffering in them and feel that, then you might think, then that can help, oh, samsara is not easy. Samsara is difficult. So that can help to have a better understanding of the suffering of the samsara. And that can also help for your own renunciation as well. So it can be supported with others as well, like for example, I was just recently, some of my friends, they had some difficulties in their life. One of their sister died suddenly. They found she was dead at home, and their very close friend that they have known for young, someone died recently. So even though they didn't have but when they see the sufferings and pain of others, that remind them of the suffering and the samsara, and so it enforce their it enforced them to understand more deeply because of that experience about the samsara in general, and to have more renunciations, you know. Um, and that kind of experience happened to all of us, And sometimes it doesn't happen to us. We feel that way by observing, because by seeing the pain and suffering around us, So from other suffering, pain, it can also help us, you know. So with the compassion, because you contemplate and feel about the other's suffering and pain, and that can also help us our own renunciation as well. But in generally, then that's how the stages of path: renunciation and then bodhicitta. Yeah. Okay. Mm. So then we go to the seconds. The second is the bodhicitta. Okay. And again with that, same like the renunciation, the purpose of reasoning, the purpose of cultivating the bodhicitta, how to cultivate the bodhicitta, and the measurement or definition of having generated the bodhicitta. So three, I think there might be one questions. Does trying to free yourself from the first type of pain, like headache, cause negative samsara? I didn't get exactly the trying to free yourself from the first type of pain. I understand, like headache, cause negative samsara. That one.
I guess what I mean is, the second and third type of pain I understand, because they're about sort of joy, happiness or joy feeling from, samsara issues. But the first type, which relates to a physical pain, avoiding that, or being glad you no longer have a headache, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything, is that a result of, does that result in negative samsara, or is that just one of the types of pain you can have?
Still, I didn't get exactly your questions. Sorry.
I guess I was just wondering is, if you take, say, the second type of samsara, like change,
Yeah.
I can understand how, you're taking a long walk and then that feels great, but then you walk too far and you start to feel bad. And, looking for that enjoyment from the first part and enjoying that is really, just dealing with a samsara type issue rather than like real enjoyment, true enjoyment. But I was wondering, when you talk about the first type of pain, which is a physical pain, or even say trying to free yourself from a disease or an injury or something like that, those seem I was just wondering if obviously that's in the world of samsara, but does that cause a negative? Is that negative, that something you should try to not do or avoid, in the same way that you try to avoid, having a samsara type enjoyment with walking and things like that? Does that make any sense?
I think so now. Yeah, I think I got your questions now. Yeah, also we try to, nobody wants suffering and pain. And so therefore we try to avoid pain and sufferings. And so therefore that kind of, physical pain and suffering is, nobody wants, whether it's human beings, animals, any sentient beings, nobody wants that pain and suffering. So if there's a way to avoid that, if there is a way to avoid that pain, if there is a way to free from that pain and suffering, we should try to avoid, we should try to free from them, we should try to release from them. And so that is, so therefore, yeah, so therefore we should try to avoid, we should try to free, liberate from those pains as well, so yeah. So not only so basically, we try to see how all these three different kind of the suffering, understanding they all are pains, they all are sufferings, they all are suffering, and therefore we need to free ourselves from all these three types of sufferings. And the way to free ourselves from all these three types of suffering is by freeing ourselves from the delusion and the karma. Because of the delusion and karma, it produced the third type of the suffering, all-pervasive suffering. Because of all-pervasive suffering, then it gives rise to the suffering of change and suffering of pain. And so, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. So then if there's no question, then, I don't know. We have 7 minutes, maybe we can. So the purpose of generating the mind of enlightenment. So in verse number 6, even if renunciation has been developed, if it is not possessed by the mind of enlightenment, so Bodhichitta, it does not become cause of perfect bliss of unsurprised enlightenment, the fully enlightenment, the Buddhahood. Therefore, the wise generate the supreme mind of enlightenment. So here he's saying, as someone who is on the path, Bodhisattva path, someone who is on the path to achieve enlightenment, to benefit all sentient beings. For someone who is on that path, even if you have renunciations, but if you don't have bodhicitta, then whatever practice you do, whatever meditation you do, whatever form of practice, whatever form of meditation you do, they can become a cause of individual liberation, but they cannot become cause of fully enlightenment, cause of, if you don't have bodhicitta motivations. And so therefore, we need to generate bodhicitta mind. In order to achieve fully enlightenment, you need to create cause and conditions of that enlightenment. And if you don't have bodhicitta motivation, even if you have renunciation, that will not become the cause for fully enlightenment. It can become a cause to free from the samsara. It can become a cause It would become a cause to free from samsara. It would become a cause for liberations, individual liberation, but it will not become cause to fully enlightenment, And so therefore, one must generate the Bodhichitta mind um, to make sure that all our practice, all our meditations become the path to enlightenment. They all become cause to enlightenment. They all become path and cause to benefit others, all other sentient beings. And so therefore, that is why we need to generate Bodhichitta mind, With the Bodhichitta motivations, even we engage in a very small virtues, such as, giving small, little bit of water to a bird outside, you leave a water for the bird or insect, whatever, whoever want to drink it. Even it's just small act of that, putting there, become act of bodhisattva. If you had the right, if we have the bodhicitta motivation when we do that, if we can develop bodhicitta motivations, then that act of giving water or giving one grain to any kind of insect or any animals or any beings, that act become bodhisattva's act, bodhisattva practice. It become cause of enlightenment, cause to enlightenment. On other hand, without bodhicitta, and even with the renunciation, you might engage in feeding the whole being in this world. That virtues, of course, is a great virtues, and you are feeding the whole sentient beings in this planet. That act doesn't become the bodhisattva act. That doesn't become cause to fully enlightenment. So that's where, with that bodhicitta mind, how we can transform even the smallest act of virtues into such a powerful practice, such a powerful virtue, such a powerful act, and therefore why we need to generate the bodhicitta mind. Also, as all the Katamba master says, the great Katamba master says, there's nothing more powerful to purify than generate bodhicitta. There's nothing more powerful to accumulate merit than to generate bodhicitta. And it's true. It's true. When you feed one animal or any beings with even a very small, one grain, one spoon of food, water, and even you are just feeding one, but if you have the bodhicitta motivations, because you are doing this for the benefit of each and every sentient being, even though practically in actions, you are able to help and benefit only one being, but you do that not only to just help that being, but in order to be benefit to each and every sentient beings. That is your intention motivations. Even though in actions, there's only one being there, but your intention motivations is to not only just help one being, but you are doing that to help that as well as to help all sentient beings. And therefore, that act is equal as helping countless sentient beings. And so that virtues, one act of that virtues become countless virtues. And that creating one merit become countless merit. And therefore with that, then you create such a incredible amount of merit in that one moment, in one small virtue, one virtue like that. by the power of the Bodhichitta mind. And so that is how it can, why when we have that Bodhichitta mind, how we can accumulate merit so strong, so big, so powerful in every moment we engage in the virtues with that kind of Bodhichitta mind. You know, yeah. And so that is, it is the Bodhichitta mind, you know. For example, Arhat, you know, even though they have such incredible virtues, you know, they have pure, you know, pure moral discipline, the practice of pure moral discipline. They have unshakable meditative concentration, shamatha, all kind of many different levels of shamatha. They have wisdom realizing emptiness directly, you know, and so many other virtues, so many other virtues. But because they don't have Bodhichitta mind, therefore they are still not on the path to enlightenment. Because they don't have Bodhichitta mind, therefore they are not on the Bodhisattva path. Therefore their practice doesn't become Bodhisattva practice. And what makes difference is because of not having Bodhichitta mind, even though they have so many other positive qualities, incredible positive qualities, inner qualities. I think in where is that? I think it's Chandrakirti's, his commentary on Middle Way. He explains, you know, with the example, you know, when someone, you know, a son is born in a royal families, okay, who is going to become the crown prince and the king. Of course, we are using example from the old time, okay, but that is how it used to be. So when a crown prince is born, even though that crown prince does not have much knowledge, much experience about life, about anything, just newly born crown prince, by power of being born in a royal family, that prince become overwhelmed, even the most experienced, even the most wise ministers, you know, he become, you know, he's more higher than the ministers who have all the experiences and all the wisdom and wise to run this country, to give the advice to the king and all of that, even though they have all this experience, knowledge, all of that, but the moment you are born in that royal family, by being born there, it become more powerful and overwhelm the such a wise and experienced minister, where they have to respect, bow to the prince. Same way they say that is no bodhisattvas, those who have cultivated the bodhichitta, even they don't have the wisdom realizing emptiness or wisdom realizing emptiness directly and many other practices that the arhat could have. But because of like being born in the royal family, just by having bodhichitta mind, by the power of the bodhichitta mind, it overpower even the great arhat who have all these other incredible positive qualities. And even that bodhisattvas become the object of respect and homage even by those arhat. So that is why the bodhicitta is so powerful, so powerful. Okay, so maybe we'll do the dedications. Yeah. Again, I'm going to chant in Tibetan. You can follow me, or you can read in English, whatever you feel more comfortable. Yawadi nyodo da lama sangye gyo ne yo chi gyama le pa de sala kwe para sho chanjo sem choren bo che ma ke pa na ke gyo ke wa nyam ba me ba ya con le conto pe wara sho. Jigden kamde pende malu ba kan le chung e sanbe yishe no gardin chung me tenzen gyaso la so wa depso tuje lundu sho. Tu tu chang xin chang gen jia ge ten zin zhong pe we kun su to poro zi cho son ku we le mo tu tu a da so lu je kun du sha pen shu. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Good night. Thank you. Take care. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Geshe-la.